I'm going to start off with a couple of screenshots from video games. My name is Daniel Alejandro Trejo. I am an artist based out of Stockton, California. And currently I'm in my studio at Birch Center for the Arts in Sacramento, where we will also be hosting next year's NCECA, which is the National Conference of the Education of Ceramic Arts, or something like that. But if you're going to be participating in that next year, please stop by, visit us, Birch Center for the Arts. I'll include that in the chat later when we are towards the end of the conversation.
Well, that's where he's at.
Yeah, I'm at Birch. So I'm going to start off with like some of the experiences that I've obtained when I was growing up. I would play a lot of video games, and a lot of these video games that I would play were not necessarily age appropriate, and they encompassed a lot of stealth type puzzles, and one of them being Metal Gear Solid. And I became really interested in revisiting these as an adult, or like these video games that I used to play, simply because it taught me a lot about stealth and what that even means, and different methods of violence as well. And how do we protect ourselves when we are in a sense of danger?
Listen to this shit. Sorry, I'll be better at managing mute.
Yeah, sorry. Can everyone please mute their mics or their speakers? It's kind of difficult for me to speak and also receive audio at the same time. Thank you. So with stealth, stealth has implications of avoiding harm, including death, and also becoming discovered. One of the video games that was really influential, and it's actually really dark, was Abe's Odyssey, Oddworld. And in this game, you're basically just, the main character is realizing that their species is being slaughtered, and your job is to liberate everyone in this world, and you're slowly trying to sacrifice bits of yourself too, while assimilating to the language you're slowly learning, just to help everyone out at the end. Let's see, I'm gonna go on to the next slide. Something else that is very, very pivotal in the forms that I'm making is this chalk outline. Chalk outlines have been really influential in my work because of the connotation that they indicate, whether it's something very hazardous happened, a hazardous environment, something violent. And it also tells us a lot about like the situation that occurred. Now, there is one thing that does not necessarily or doesn't really encompass a lot, is like, who was the victim of this crime? It doesn't tell us anything about their race, their gender, their identity. And so I draw a lot of these inspirations from popular media. I mean, even from the literature that I would read when I was growing up as well. I was like 9 or 10 years old. This is in Mexico City. This is from El Metro, which is it's a newspaper in Mexico City, and it kind of glorifies death or exploits people's bodies, people's corpses. And it's just something that I grew up with that just became a little bit more fascinating to me. And not to sensationalize it, but I just thought it was very curious understanding these different types of laws that exist in this country and in Mexico about like what can be photographed and what can be circulated in these newsprints, especially during a time of violence. I mean, 2020 was just like very, very difficult. I mean, we were just all surrounded in violence, and it was also a public health issue that we're still dealing with today. I'm gonna keep on moving. So here we go with with my first pieces, I should say, where I was starting to explore more with the form. In my studio practice, I usually start making works that are just either in black or white, no glazes, no color at all, just so I could get a better understanding of the form. And I tried to mimic a lot of these outlines. And I tried my best to also obscure it or make it vague. A lot of the reference material that I get comes from objects left behind, including in video games. When you eliminate the bad guy, they drop a lot of loot or items once they're no longer existing. So I was drawing a lot of references from that. Here we have this. It's just greenware. It has not been fired at all. It's ceramics. And then also look into meme culture as well. There was this one photograph that was circulating back in 2015, chalk outline where a raccoon died. His name was Conrad the raccoon. Folks started messing around with the corpse of the raccoon. They drew a chalk outline out around it, put hazard cones, and then they even put like a cigarette in his front right paw as well. And I thought that was like really interesting how folks were engaging with something that was no longer existing. I think they even held like a candlelight vigil with it. So I became really interested in how people perceive death or how they also grieve. Here's another image of that, in loving memory of Conrad the raccoon. So there's a lot of sense of humor that comes with it too, which is like exploring these concepts of violence and death and loss. And I'm also just curious to see how we cope with it, and what's also our threshold where we start harming ourselves once the violence becomes too heavy or too much. And right here, this is an earlier shot from my studio from 2015, 2016. And on the upper left, these are just the white pieces. And then that's when I started playing around later with color. I felt that in ceramics, there was just like a great deal of absence in variety of color, especially here in Northern California, where in ceramics, you just get a lot of beige, black, white, a lot of earth tones, especially when you're seeing pottery or being exposed to clay works. And I was thinking a lot about color and pastels, and also thinking about like negotiating different hues and different tones as well, because you're just trying to avoid from the work becoming tacky. I mean, I went through so many different pieces of pink or types of pink for this one particular piece. I think at one point it was green, or it changed to green when I was showing it at East Side Los Angeles, where I met Emily Blythe Jones and also Kellen. And that was back in 2018. So I went through a variety of color changes. And then here's a recent installation image from a show that I had at Holland Projects. And for these, I started thinking more about how to position the ceramic works on pedestals beyond the traditional expectation of it. And when I was manufacturing these, or when I was fabricating these, I was thinking a lot about coffins as well as tombstones, and how these could be symbols of markers where something tragic occurred. For this particular piece, this is called paracaídas, or parachute. And here in Stockton, there's a town called Lodi, California, which is like maybe 20 minutes north from here, 20 to 25 minutes north. And they have this skydiving facility, and there's just too many deaths that occur. I think that one death is a lot already. And it just got me thinking about like my close proximity to death as well, just like growing up in Stockton, California, in a neighborhood that is just very dangerous. And I think our ranking in homicides was just at the top tier here in California. Here's another installation shot as well. Another one. And then for some of these pedestals, I was also thinking about labor and folks who have been victims of violence or victims of a hazardous situation in the place that they occupy, whether it's because of socioeconomic status or also because of, unfortunately, mass shootings that occur as well. I'm thinking a lot about environment. And at this point, I'm also just thinking about how this just sprawls out and bleeds into other fields where it just starts taking over the gallery space. And then it wasn't until recently I started thinking more about the idea of autopsy, or what happens after the body or after the fact. And operation is a very interesting game that kind of, I feel like it's the reason why I'm stressed out and very anxious today. Essentially, you're picking out objects from pretty much like a board. And you have to have really good hand-eye coordination, because if you touch the edges of the silhouette of what the object is supposed to be, the entire thing rings, and you could just assume that the patient that you're working on has passed away. So I was thinking a lot about this idea of autopsy, and then just trying to make sense of body parts as well, where someone's just examining to see how someone was harmed or how they lost life. It could go from anywhere from removing thyroid cartilage, just removing body parts such as ribs to see how they crack. And then here was just like my own representation of what an autopsy table will look like, just referring to, or like changing the aesthetic of it. And then for this show, I just wanted the pieces to be at a taller scale because the table is slightly taller than what a typical table is, or like what a pedestal is right here. And this is the current show at Monte Vista. And then when it comes to archiving or taking images of the separate individual pieces of my work, I'm also looking a lot at images from anthropological books from the 1960s and 70s, and how a lot of works were photographed with a very vibrant background, and then just keeping the fragments in the center in the frame. And then I'll end my presentation with this one, which is actually the very first piece that I made, which is part of the series back in 2016. And that's it. Thanks, Kellen.
Beautiful. Thank you. That was a well put together presentation. And Dan, you're a featured artist at NSICA this year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I was a panelist. I participated in a panel discussion, and I just feel like I really wish that I could have dived more into the concept of ceramics here, but I know that we're dealing with a variety of different, experiences. So I couldn't really geek out too much about clay. But for those who are familiar with clay, please just ask any questions, or for those who aren't, I'm open.
You guys want to, do you want to take questions individually? So maybe after the mangler goes on, he could take some questions and we could ask some questions of Daniel right now. I know I've got a couple. I'm asking my friends Charlene and Kyle, I was like, what's the name of the frickin' East Bay ceramicist who makes the robots? And it's Clayton Bailey. That's the guy I was trying to tell you about earlier, Daniel. And he had this character called like Professor Marvel or something like this. And for those of you who don't know Clayton Bailey's work, he would create facsimiles of cryptomorph sort of forms, right? Like Sasquatch or Cthulhu, and he'd recreate their bones in ceramic, and then he'd bury them, and then he'd show up as this this sort of archaeologist, right, who'd turn up and unbury these bones. And I just think about that in Dr. Gladstone. I'm being corrected. It was just Bigfoot archaeology specifically. And I'm just thinking about your work in terms of that same sort of like, when you're talking about death, you're not talking about like the concurrence of death. You're talking about looking at something when you have very little information, right? Like the chalk outline is a time at which, you talked about it's genderless. It's, you don't have their ASL. You've got very little information. So I was thinking about that, as well as Andy Warhol's, the prints that he made of the traffic collisions, where he was famous for like having a police scanner and driving out to these crashes and making really beautiful prints out of something that would be otherwise quite gruesome. So those are just some things that I was thinking about. And so a question I wanted to ask was, how does the like super high mortality rate? I think you guys might be #1 in California. I definitely top 10, but like we were talking about it today. I had a birthday and we were kind of having this conversation. I'm like, Stockton's a rough town, man. And I'm just wondering how that influences and affects the work.
Yeah, I think you become desensitized once you're just like living in it and you grew up in it. And it was no different in 1990s Mexico City. I think in the 90s anywhere, like 90s East LA, or even like 1990s New York City, we were just like involved in so much. 1990s Long Beach too. Oakland, I think we were just so deeply involved in violence, whether we were experiencing passively or and by passively, I mean just like reading about it in the news or watching it in the news. There was just so much that occurred. And I think what really influenced me the most about just growing in these environments was also just like being able to recognize like how much of myself to shrink myself as a method of protection, because I am a gay individual, queer. When you live in environments that are not as progressive as others, such as like Los Angeles, there are moments where you really have to start shrinking yourself as a survival method, as a survival mechanism. And that's what these silhouettes also mean to me. That's what my work also means to me as well. It's like, how much of ourselves do we have to sacrifice in order to protect ourselves? And even at that point, that isn't enough, because like at the end of the day, we will get harmed in one way or another when someone's just like paying close attention to you, analyzing your being, and some form of harm will come, whether it's also public policy harm. There's many different methods of violence that when we think about violence, we immediately think about like someone striking each other, or someone being accosted, or someone getting cursed out, or et cetera, things like that. But there's also methods of violence that occur when someone is waiting for a disability application and the adjudicator is just being very like, oh, it's no rush, it's whatever. And that's kind of like a timeline that will eventually harm that person at the end of the day, because they're working for these, or they're waiting for these funds in order to survive. I think a lot about survival as well.
I love what you had to say about like shrinking yourself. That isn't a term that I've applied to it, but certainly as a gay man, you learn, and we all have big mouths, and you learn to, truncate it. And I think certainly the experience of being like a white gay man is a little bit more enabling than it would to be, BIPOC, gay man, or, queer, gender non-binary individual. Like that must really be an affect.
Yeah, and that's what I liked a lot about the video game Oddworld, like the one that was the second slide, because like that character, you change your being, you change yourself, you change your voice, you alter your voice. You're also like, in order to survive, sometimes you have to add a little bit more, bass to how you're speaking or acting, mass, passing and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot that you have to change about yourself in order to survive that I think is also a little bit actually, it is traumatizing. It is, because like even the way how I'm speaking English right now, Spanish is my first language, trying to perfect the language in order to survive, because I will get some biases, or I will get discriminated against if I have the slightest accent up here.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that goes anywhere, especially when you're navigating universities as well. Like these institutions can be very racist as well.
Yeah, I had a student the other day, it broke my heart, tell me that he didn't like speaking because he has a Hispanic accent. And like, we live in Los Angeles, first of all. that's a non-issue for me, but I understand like that idea like of protecting yourself, right? Code switching. And sort of like the idea that your work is about code switching isn't something that I would have ever, on first glance, maybe pulled out of it. So we had a couple questions. And if you guys don't mind, I can read them off for you, or if you guys want to ask yourselves. We're an adult group. This isn't like my classroom time. So Christine Atkinson, who's an artist that we've shown in the space in the past, and who's been a wonderful, shows up to every opening kind of gal, says she was also born in Stockton, and wondering if you could talk about the choice of color and the light color palette. You said that some of them had changed color as the process went along, and what is it that you're looking for in terms of color?
Yeah, I think what I'm looking for the most is something that looks aesthetically pleasing to me. I think in the moment, sometimes I tend to rush to a final decision on the color that I'm making, or that I'm applying to the form. I'm also trying to see what color coordinates better with a different type of form. And there's a lot of negotiations that comes with that. A piece might look great with yellow, but another one might not. And I'm trying to look at any of the pieces from the Monte Vista show that I have right now, if I've actually altered any of those colors, but I haven't actually, because I've done a much better job at figuring out to make really miniature textiles, and then running with that. Like that's where a lot of the edits actually go. There's one piece in the textile that I think I did three or four different types of green. It could be like mint green, evergreen. Like I'm tired of that color, honestly. But yeah, it's mostly an aesthetic decision that I go through, like something that just feels right with me. Same goes with form. I destroy as many pieces as I make. I think easily I made over 100 pieces, and not all over 100 are existing. And it's not because it didn't survive the kiln firing process, but it's mainly just because it didn't feel right to me. I do a lot of preliminary sketches before I even begin to make these sculptures. And mainly it's because I work full time, and also it's very, very draining. And I like to have an idea of coming into studio and knowing what needs to get done on that day. And then also figuring out the drying process as well, because there's only so much manipulation you could do to the form before it becomes quote unquote permanent.
Okay, and I apologize if you guys see me looking down. It's because y'all are messaging me right now. It's your own fault. Okay, so and Mendocino Art Center, which is which I have not gotten around to visiting, is asking how the colors are achieved. And I think I can just quickly say that I know Dan is using underglazes, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And then the second
Correct.
question, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I use a lot of underglazes. Like I'm not even joking when I say that I go through 5 or 6 different pinks, and they just get applied over and over and over again till I figure out which one feels right to me. Sometimes they also get fired many times.
I would also say that in person, they take on the, I kept talking about Pac-Man, right? They remind me of the Pac-Man ghosts. They take on these like pop culture like symbiotes, right? They're like the chalk outlines of all your favorite cartoons, almost in a way. And then there's another question about color that's like in terms of thinking about violence, like, and I think the question is really about the contrast between like fun, soft, pastel-y colors, like we were talking about Smarties being like the worst candy ever made. But that it takes on those sort of like connotations versus the violence you're talking about. Maybe you could talk about that contrast just for a second.
Yeah, of course. That's something that I think a lot about too. There's so many different things that I have in mind that oscillate in my studio or in my practice. I really love that question a lot, Cheyenne. I was trying to look for you in the gallery thing, but it's something that I was dealing with a lot, like figuring out to see if I was worried if they would be seen as playful or something less serious. And I considered it this way because like the very first ones were white that I was making. Before I did the actual color run, they were all black. So first it was just the clay body, then I started doing it black. And then I was like, okay, well, I kind of don't like this because this is just being read as like, okay, it's just the line and everything. And I wanted to really start exploring more with color because I feel color just intuitively draws someone in. It pulls people in. And I'm really influenced a lot by paintings as well. Paintings by Elizabeth Murray, huge influence. I think I'm more influenced by paintings than I am by ceramic sculpture, by sculpture in general. And I think that color is a wonderful way to have people be more curious about the work. And when you're talking about works that are contextualized with something that is very, very nasty and gritty and gross, you know, you're talking about violence. I feel like sometimes you have to make it a little bit more digestible, you know, kind of when you're taking gross medicine. I mean, the way I think of it too is like if Pepto-Bismol was not pink and it was like a different color, like that's very, very unappealing, you know, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, pardon me, I got up to get some water. Awesome.
Not that it was the cat, it's okay.
No, and you know what I was thinking about is when I sent myself, Daniel, Emily, and I were down in Mexico for Mexico Art Week about 2 years ago, right about the same time for a project that Ichiro Iri does. And I decided to take myself to Teotihuacan, and there's like this beautiful hillside of houses. And they're painted in all of Daniel's favorite colors. And apparently it was this big marketing campaign by a paint company where they repainted what is essentially, favela is the wrong word, but it's definitely a low socioeconomic status and it's supposed to be very dangerous, but they painted it all these beautiful, like fun poppy colors. And I just think about that in sort of like the depth of your work versus like the color as an initiative aspect, right? To get someone interested in the work in the first place. And I think that thinking about that trip. Also, if you guys go to Mexico City, get Daniel to go with you.
Yes, please. Shoot me an email, DM me on Instagram, because I will definitely tag along. I'll be fun.
Like, he was our translator. He found me a Black and Mild while we were there. I was desperately searching for my nicotine. Just a really fun trip.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm glad that you pointed that out too, because it's like there's so many elements that influence my work that is just one of the key ones as well. I mean, visiting my grandparents a lot in Mexico City, their neighborhood is very, very colorful. It's more so different than the touristy neighborhoods, and by that I mean like Roma, Condesa. Can't even think right now. But like those neighborhoods are more Eurocentric in terms of architecture,
sure,
versus the housing where my grandparents live, where it's just like straight up masonry, and it's just like, okay, you have like this plaster wall or this concrete wall, like that's it. Like there's no decorative element to it. So what do? We start switching up the windows, and we also start coloring in the walls too. Something very, very vibrant.
Yeah, a lot of color in Latin America. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, the United States is very, very beige, very, very beige.
Sure
white.
is.
Yeah,
but we love
boring.
our Spanish style architecture.
Yeah.
Okay, let's, Deb has pointed out that we're at the 30-minute mark here. So let's switch over to Tim. If Tim has got baby situation under control, I'm gonna put Tim on blast. That's just what I call it for my students, so forgive me, but putting you on blast because I speak like them now.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tim, why don't you give us a little bit just of your background, what's led you to make the work that you're making now, kind of like where you're coming from. For those of you who haven't seen the work, the painted portion of the show is Tim's work, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about the synergy between the two bodies of work, because these guys are just such a power couple. They're like hetero, what's it called?
Fucking damn this team.
Perfect. Okay, so Tim, take it away and I'll shut up and get rid of my face. This is exactly the artist talk I was looking forward to, though, because Tim is also Mr. Mom right now with the newborn. Okay, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, my newborn, 2 months. This is Liam. Liam has been crying. So I thought about what I wanted to do just now as Daniel was talking. I'm happily not prepared. So first I want to say thank you, Daniel. I really enjoyed your talk. I enjoyed hearing about all the stuff that goes into your work. And then, I'm not going to do an artist talk. We're going to play games. And to start the game, we're all going to close our eyes. And the game is called the Game of Painting. And the talk is about right now. So for like the last hour, this baby's been crying. And I've been using this new, well, actually it's old. So I want everybody to imagine a shelf that's just out of reach. You put that in your mind. And then we all have like the metaphorical crying babies in our life. And I want you to close your eyes and imagine what's a crying baby in your life. That's always going to be there. That's always going to be like nagging at you, like rent is due, hunger, but like more like deeper things too. So go ahead and put the crying baby on a shelf. And I'm going to mute myself while you do that. Okay, so this literal baby is going to keep crying. That's cool. Because for the game, we don't need volume. So my brother's here, Aaron, and he's going to hold the phone for me. So Aaron, could you grab the phone and place it above the setting here? And how's the lighting look? Look good? Let me flip this. We're flipping. All right, I think the lighting's decent. All right, so we'll start. Thanks everybody for being here. You're now playing the virtual game of Painter. Nah, leave it. It's better that way. All right, that's your card. All right. Don't be afraid of things because they're easy to do. All right.
No one can hide from this.
Okay, so you can put it on me real quick. You can put it on me real quick. I love the chaos of it. We're in the middle of my talk. Hey, Tom, I'm doing my art talk. You want to say hi? Well, I'm doing an artist talk. But I'm doing an artist talk. Sorry, guys. Hold on. Well, I'm not sorry. This is life. Okay. Yeah, but can you make it quick?
At the playground, we saw someone do a backflip while we were playing.
Amazing. Hey, there's like actually like, how many people are here on this call? There's going to be a number that pops up, and I want you to read it. Hold on a second. Thomas is really into numbers. He's really good at math. Okay, I can make up a number. I think there's like 20 people, and they're all wanting me to talk right now to them. Oh, this is great. Real life from this. Yeah.
I'm okay from hearing from the kid.
So Thomas, you can stay with the artist talk, but you have to be quiet the whole time. Can you do that? Okay, so Thomas is going to join us, guys. All right, so you want to go sit with Uncle Aaron? Okay. All right, my hands are free now. All right, listen. Okay. So, got it backwards.
You know what the cover dude?
Oh, do I need to flip it like that? Yeah. Actually, Thomas, I guess you can talk because I'm not really talking. I'm just showing them cards from the game of Painter. Have I told you about the game of Painter that I've been working on, Thomas?
No.
Yeah. I think it's a game that does a lot of different things. And part of it is it's a card game about making decisions. Oh, I guess we can do that. And also, I feel like it's like it's like a map of my brain, but that's not it because that's too limited, right?
But did you paint this study?
But if you study the logistics and heuristics of the mystics, you will find that their minds really move in a line. It's from a song I like. The road is made by walking. This is a game with no winners. This is a game with no losers. When the dealer discards a card, that card was a bad fit, a misfit. This is a place to become unstuck. Oh yeah, those are made out of clay. You want to be in the artist stuff? That's a device for telling nonlinear time. One goal of the game of Painter is to build a game. Hey, do you want to move the card, please? You take it one card at a time, flip it over, put it on that card. No. This is an elaborate dance to become present. Do you want to do an elaborate dance, Thomas, to become present? Okay. The dealer makes the rules. Rules can bend. Rules can blend. The dealer will now set the universe board. Oh, I'm not ready for that. But after I set the universe board, which I'll show you, is up here. That's the universe board. We use the universe board to play the game. And then we choose a painter, but we're not choosing painters right now. But maybe I can show them to you if people want to see that at the end. So there's 1, 2, 3. No, there's like 5 decks to the game. That's the first deck. The cards that explain the game. Then there's a different way of talking about the game, which I'm generically calling poetic cards. And you know I'm not talking about any of the work in the show, and we can get to that. But this is now, and I figured what's more important now. So poetic cards. We'll go through this deck. Guys, Thomas is doing so good at being quiet. Do you all want to tell him how amazingly well he's doing at being quiet? They're going to send me a message. They have their thinking. What do you need most right now? Oh, Emily Jones, Blythe Jones says, amazing job, Thomas. This is a safe mystery. Daniel says, you're doing great, Thomas. Low metabolic. What do you need from this space now? Meaning the space we're playing the game in. The upward spiral, my favorite. The year of the spiral. What happens next? Between thoughts. Working, forgetting time. All right, so we don't have any misfits in this deck, which is pretty cool. So we'll put these over here. Everything. And then last, there's the chance deck, which we're not going to go through. But I'll show you what's inside the chance deck. Thomas, do you want to see what's inside the chance deck vessel?
Mm-hmm.
Tell them what it is. Who's that?
Scorpion.
Yeah, but what's his name? Do you remember?
No.
Wyvern.
Mm.
We only have him for like a week and then he died. Okay.
Why is it so late?
I don't know. But we didn't. He wasn't drinking any water. So okay, Thomas. Now I got to go back to focusing on. Okay. Let's go with Uncle. Yeah, you can have it. You can have it. So yeah, I made the work that's in the show that's up right now, and I called every piece after, because I think I'm no longer trying to be the linear sense of an artist, like follow the certain path of, which is what I've been doing, which is, you know, you make the work, I make the work, I try and get it shown. And then there's like some sort of career aspirations wrapped up in that. And I thought, what if I just let all that go? And what if I don't care about any of that? And I did that right at the beginning of the pandemic in January. And it dovetailed, I mean, it's kind of like pandemic fucked up, but it dovetailed with like going into seclusion. And so I just started, so I stopped making artwork altogether for like 3 months. And, you know, it was kind of like this crisis. And I thought about what were all my drivers for making work? And they were all like, there was always that, that desire to make the work, right? The love making the work, and the drive to do that. And then, but there was all these like external rewards that I was trying to achieve. Rewards that would like let me know, like forms of validation. And you know, I'm not phrasing any of this in the negative per se. It's just, for me, it's just like, no, don't take this out. Don't screw up the call. It'll go to my ears. Yeah, actually, this is really distracting. I need you to go over it with Uncle. Or you need to be super, super still. Okay? Can you be super still? Yeah? Okay. And so then I thought about that, and I thought about the external rewards and how there was a lot of external rewards that I was seeking, and I wasn't getting them anyway. So I was like, oh, fuck this. And so then, sorry, Tom. So I thought, well, what kind of work would I make from this new space that's not concerned with the external rewards? And so I deleted Instagram. I stopped trying to get studio visits. I stopped going to art shows, and then the pandemic hit. And so that's when I made all this body work, all these paintings. And the paintings are called After, and they're about they're after this decisive moment. And then there was all these other decisive moments with the pandemic and with the last administration. And so some audio coming through. So that's it. And so then after I made these paintings, And then I was so happy because the timing worked out perfectly when we were ready to show them, and they're up now. And so I've retired Tim McMullen as an artist, and this is my last show as an artist, maybe forever. And now I'm just playing the game of Painter, and I can talk about either thing. But yeah, so welcome to my retirement party, and welcome to my last show. Thank you. That's it. That's my talk. It's a little choppy.
I loved every bit of it, Tim. There's nothing that like the kid being part of the artist talk, and everyone's like, more Thomas, less Tim. Not.
Did you hear that?
But
Thomas, they wanted more Thomas in the artist talk.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, you know, this is sort of like, you know, there's definitely a bit of nihilism wrapped into it all, but it's not just nihilism. It's like an acceptance of like our own lived realities, right? And I had not talked to Tim about you know, the idea of this being his last show or anything like that. And I think that what you're really talking about is art as being like a wayfinding. And I think you may have even used that term. I feel like your paintings are always like an if-then hypothesis, right? And how you guide yourself through that process is the after, right? Like the painting is almost a relic of the process in that way. And correct me if I'm misunderstanding. One thing I wanted to ask you is, who's the dealer of the game of painting? Who is the dealer? Is the dealer you as the creator? Is the dealer you as the one introducing us to it? Is it all of us individually as participants in the game?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for that, so it's the dealer can be anybody, and it just gets decided in the moment. And then the game can only be played in this space that I'm in right now. I don't know if that will change someday. And
It's your artwork studio.
it's my artwork studio. Yep. And
It's not a place.
it's not a place. Well, it's a place too.
It's an art studio.
Okay, I gotta focus on the talk, Thomas. Could you just talk to Uncle Aaron if you have a question? I'm sorry. Distract. People are calling me. Like, you know. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's it. I got super distracted.
No, this is great. Okay, so maybe, okay, I was talking about the dealer in the game of painting. You also went into mysticism and poetics. And I want you to maybe just like, talk to me about the universe board. It's behind you right now. It's a lovely piece of what looks like ash or poplar with painting atop it. So maybe you could, and you've kind of like drawn in between the symbolism of, you know, like the rings of a tree and then like our galactic structure, right? Like we're in the Milky Way. I've been watching the universe on Netflix, so I'm well acquainted with it currently. But both the sort of symbolism between those sort of like structures, right? Like between the macro and the micro, the rings of a tree as compared to, you know, the Milky Way. And then like the thing that I'm thrown back to is like Microsoft Windows 95 with that stars. Do you remember the stars screensaver? It's very much giving me that, like, I don't know, we're old. As we were all just discussing recently. I have a birthday today, but Tim was making a little bit of fun of me because you got a few years on me, but not many. So maybe you could just talk about the universe board, like your sense of mysticism. I saw Palo Santo was out at the very beginning of the game, and just kind of like the poetics of what it is that you do.
Yeah, I think I can answer that with this deck. Does that sound good? All right, so there's this discussion deck, which is part of the deck of the game of painting, which we didn't go through. So we're gonna go through the thing. This is how I think about things. And this is based on, no, based on a bunch of shit. Okay, let's go through the thing. Yeah, I'm in such a weird space right now because I just retired as an artist. This is my first time saying that out loud in quasi-public setting, so it's fun to try that on. So I don't want to talk about anything the way I used to talk about everything. So I'm going to talk about it through these cards. So this is the thing, a game in the discussion deck. And we'll start with this. You enter a room, a gallery, a studio. There's this thing. There's a thing of your interest. And then there's all these other parts as you work your way towards the thing, you know. Well, there's the thing. You want to get to that. Then there's moving. There's just a literal moving through a space. Just looking.
Much better.
There's translating, which can take on many forms. There's some fuzz, noise. I think somebody's speakers on or microphones on. There's translating to maybe your native tongue, translating to other images.
Your system's online.
Translating to other ideas. There's work. Maybe you just came from work. Maybe you're about to go to work. Maybe you're out of work. Hunger and mood. Parallel thought. Art history. I think everybody has some form of art history, even if it's really shitty. Like, even if it's like, oh, that's such a thing to say. Never mind. Everybody has a form of art history that they're drawing from. What I meant by really shitty is like, and that was a judgment call. I should not say that. But if your art history is like covers a phone book, no, that's super old. Nobody has that. Whatever. I'm moving on. Kind of flubbed that one, guys. We're just gonna move on. Personal history, time and space, and then all of this is an elaborate dance for me to get you to get lost in the act of looking. It's all this adds up to, and then there's some other shit. And the reason why I want you to get lost in the act of looking through my paintings is I want you to lose the ability to name. I want the painting to point to things that seem like quick and obvious references, but are not. And because I want you to get beyond that place of naming and language. And by getting beyond that place of naming and language, it is my goal that we can all access this space. How's that?
All right. I am into this game of painting, but you need to have me over to play it.
The game of painter.
The game of painter. I apologize for misgendering the game. So let's see. Cheyenne was talking about your process of disentangling with the word artist, which I also, as convincing as you are, I don't believe for a second that you're going to stop painting. But the idea of being like a professional artist is like a profound anxiety. So one of the questions I had for both of you that I wanted to ask is, what keeps you up at night? And it's like totally non-art related, but given our current context, we're all, I don't know, I live in the same place that I work, in the same place that I eat, in the same place that I sleep, right? And right now, like being stuck in that bubble is very much the thing that keeps me up at night. So maybe that's a good segue into kind of like art related, but non-art question that Cheyenne poses, like disentangling yourself from the word artist itself and all the expectations that bears. Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I love that question, and it's so helpful for me because all of this kind of came flooding out as soon as my son was born 2 months ago, and it was just like this rapid change, which is kind of how like I guess I go through life anyway. It's just like these long moments of like build up, and then it's like, okay. But to lose the term artist is in a way has been really liberating because this studio space is it's a space right now that's physically in transition. The walls are going blue. There's a lot more things that are in here that would never be in here. And what I'm making it now is, instead of a space for myself, a space for everyone. And I was really hung up on this idea of like, oh, you know, you got to live your dream. You got to live your dream life. And like, I was like, well, my dream is being in the studio all day and making paintings. And I was like, well, is that really my dream? And like, yeah, perhaps it's like, that's cool. I'd love to do that, but that's just not in the cards. And so I thought, well, what I love is actually just being creative in this space. And then if I could open that up to with my sons or my partner or friends, family, then like that's great. And the old practice I had, the painting practice, the art practice, didn't really allow for that kind of fluidity of space and fluidity of like maybe how a space is allocated. And by ditching the identity of an artist as an individual, I feel a lot more looser to just explore and play. And I'm sort of taking on this idea of, I don't know what the current identity is here, but it's getting figured out. But it's not strictly artist. It's not strictly just like I make paintings. That's what I do. And put them on Instagram. Sorry, that sounded more negative than it should have been. But that was me. That was me. I make paintings. I put them on Instagram. I hope something happens. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes they don't happen. But my level of joy like doesn't change. Like, and this kind of like upward spiral trip I'm on right now is there's a lot more reward in it every day, which I like that. So I'm happy.
Yeah,
Bottom line.
I'm loving what Cheyenne is saying. Cheyenne, we're not, we don't know each other yet. We're not friends yet, but I'm loving what he's having to say in the chat, or she. I know both male and female Cheyenne, so I apologize if I misgendered anyone. But saying the practice fitting us rather than us fitting into it, right? Like, as opposed to like, you learn in undergrad and graduate school that you are to go out and find a gallery, right? You're to be showing every however many months. And I think in a lot of ways, quarantine and the pandemic has really upended that. Like, why, like, you know, if other people don't care about it, then why should I? And my creative practice should be my creative practice, period. Something that I want to ask you about is, you've recently been having people into your studio, right? You've been showing your own work, inviting people into the studio. And I'm interested in sort of the dichotomy between like art viewership and being an active participant in art, and how you see that in like the gallery setting, right? Like I'm not inviting anyone to come in and rehang your paintings, but I think that that is something that you would be very open to. Like if I had put 100 nails on the wall and said, you know, come in, see the show, hang Tim's work however he wants, however you would like to, just knowing about your own personal practices and like what we talked about in terms of hanging the show. I did a very typical hang, right? And maybe that's naivete on my part, you know, and sort of, you know, not at the beginning of my curatorial practice, but, you know, somewhere near the beginning. And so maybe you could just talk about, like I said, that relationship between viewership and active participation in art,
Yeah.
art making, art hanging, curatorial work, stuff like that.
Yeah, another really great question. So to give some context, the 21 paintings were made in this space, and there was a very kind of like, you know, a couple on this wall, a couple on the other wall, and then there was like main viewing wall. which is the wall that's behind me now. And it didn't have this window before that. I had covered up the window. And so this was like a serious painting wall. And so I did all the work. And what I enjoyed with the work is putting up the individual paintings one at a time on the wall and slowly backing up and experiencing them that way. And then I would put them back into the groups and they would operate in a totally other way. And I thought that was like a fun experience. And I was like, well, I want to recreate this experience for viewers. So I invited through postcards about a dozen people to come and see the work. And you have to schedule this time because of COVID, you know, all this stuff. And so I'd have people over one time and I'd tell them, you know, there's a few sculptures in the room and stuff. And I said, you can take any of these paintings off the wall and you can view them on like the viewing wall. And you can put them in any arrangement you want. There was a couple spare spots to hang them on. And then I would just kind of sit in the corner and they would just like go for it. And what I noticed is nobody was interacting with the work the way I wanted them to. And a little bit of background on that is the canvas is raw on the edges. And this is sort of completing another artist's work that I wanted to see, which is, I don't know if completing is the right word. So it's an homage to Robert Irwin, who in his book, Seeing is Forgetting, the name of one we see or whatever, he talks about this body work he made that got thrown away or whatever, no longer exists, where there were these little like tablets almost, and they were paintings that you held. And I think he may have spoken something to the fact that, you know, they degrade over time, they get dirty. And I always loved this idea of that work, but I can't see it. And I've always wanted to recreate it, but I'm not Robert Irwin, so I'll just like do like a shout out to him. So I left the canvas raw on the side so that you would come in and you would touch the canvas. And I'd give you like a quick art tip, like touch the face of the canvas, blah, blah, blah. But the oils from your skin and like the dirt rub off. And I like that. And I like that, you know, over centuries, if the paintings are somewhere, they can just like totally degrade. And so most people just played. And what they did is they just felt really liberated to play. And the other thing I wanted to get at is I was an art handler for like 10 years or something. And there's something about touching art, really valuable art, or really important art, and how it takes it out of the sacred, and it makes it really common, but then it's still sacred. And it's this weird space that's constantly negotiating because you can't fuck it up, but at the same time, you just got to move it across the room, and like you're just hungry for lunch, and the curator is really annoying, and it's a really weird way to interact with artwork. And I kind of wanted to recreate that space for somebody in my studio. And so by saying you can go, you can touch these things, you can move them, it changes the power dynamic, it changes the physical relationship. All of a sudden, you're really close. And I thought, like, okay, they're really close up, but put the paint on the wall, go back away. But only painters do that. And what everybody wanted to do is they just wanted to play. And that was great. And so the current trajectory, the game of Painter was born out of that. Those were a lot of work.
Yeah, I love the idea of you potentially even making paintings with, you know, the layman is a charged term, but like the idea of someone who's not a painter, or someone who didn't go to art school, coming in and you know, playing the game of Painter with you, and you're just almost like the vehicle for the work. I did want to ask you a couple questions from the chat. So Trevor asks, and Trevor is a great friend of mine, business major, is that right, Trevor, when we were at CSUN? But also someone who took a lot of sculpture and was really invested in art making, and you know, whatever, I sing his praises. I shouldn't do that, he's an asshole. But he's interested to hear what about the term artist feels so heavy or limiting to you. And I think that and then he also asks what needs to be left behind, you know, about the very charged term, like artist is a charged term. You know, I'm not a straight man, but Daniel and I were talking the other day. It's like, man, there are just some guys who are artists who are like, it's the same guy who would bring a guitar to a party, right? And so there is like that, I don't mean to put that on you as all Tim, you are all straight people right now responding to that question. Maybe you could talk about like what is limiting about being an artist versus like what you intend to leave behind in terms of that. I think that that's a really beautiful question.
Okay, here we go. Again, I'm not an artist anymore, so I don't have to do the things that I
My mistake. You were true.
No, I'm just saying, what is artist? It's hard to write and hold its phone. And then the other part is what needs to be left behind. To be, sorry, I shouldn't have called it. It takes the time to say. Okay. So this is a bench I made. And this is the library. The library contains all the rocks. The library also contains pieces of the game playing here. More rocks up here. Okay. So this is the healer. It's another game inside the game of Painter. Or maybe it's its own game. So this, I don't know what to do with. So I'm gonna stick it underneath the healer. And if you want, we can talk about it maybe in a week when I figure it out.
Right.
Oh my God.
I love that.
That's a non-answer. But
Yeah,
we can also
no.
consult the deck. Perfect. Perfect every time. Disconnect from desire. There's the answer.
I'm ready for this to be like printed. Maybe you're a game designer. Who knows?
This is not my deck. This is Oblique Strategies by Brian Miller, Peter Schmidt.
Yeah, those are really nice. That was a gorgeous little card there. So I had a billion other questions for you guys, but we've gone about an hour now. Are there any other questions from our viewers / art participants? Right now we're in the realm of not only are you a viewer and casting the gaze, but you are also a participant in the work, all of the white paintings. I'll open it up and you guys can pop on and mute yourselves. Let your crying babies scream, whatever needs to happen.
I just got to check in to see if I'm needed upstairs for the said crying baby, but I'm just going to mute myself. I'm listening.
Go get it. Does anyone want Thomas back?
Thomas is bedtime, but the baby.
Oh, little guy. Well, you better.
I just found out babies don't produce melatonin, so they don't know how to sleep. So babies don't.
No kidding. Well, I don't either, apparently. So, there's that.
Thanks. Real thing. All
right. Trevor has a question for Daniel. I wanted to bring up with Daniel. It's so interesting to hear about your interactions with stealth games, especially Oddworld. Okay, just personal knowledge. Trevor, huge nerd, huge gamer.
Sweet.
And he's talking about the strange darkness / like the hopefulness of it, and maybe either one of you could answer, because I think there's a little bit of darkness and hope in both bodies of work. And then we're going to.
Oh my God, I love the little thread from Timba too.
I'm going to give you guys.
Abe's Odyssey still weirds me out.
Let's go until like 8:15, and then we're going to take a deep breath. And Tim and Dan and I will stay on for a couple seconds to just chat amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll address Trevor and anyone else who's familiar with the game or isn't familiar with the game. Yeah, as a child, when I was playing it, I would sneak into the living room, play it until like 3 a.m., trying so hard to keep advancing in the game. And I didn't realize that it was very, very dark, very grim until in my adulthood, until I started Googling to see what the game was really about. I think as a child, you're not really paying attention to what you're playing. It's just like more you're interested in the bells and whistles of the task. Like, okay, this is kind of fun. But I also read that it was kind of banned in some countries too.
No kidding. Yeah, I'm not familiar with, I remember it being a thing, but it's not something that I was particularly familiar with. I don't think either one of you answered my question. What keeps you guys up at night right now?
I'm in a weird space. I'm nothing's keeping me up. And I'm not trying to sound pretentious or like some sort of like transcendent. It's just right now. The reason why I say that is because I'm really fortunate because I got to take 3 months off of work, and you know I've always worked full time, and I kind of just have been letting go during this time and becoming delightfully unraveled and like a very much no fucks given attitude most days, which is pretty weird. And I'm just super present with the joy of being with my newborn, and then also being with my oldest, and just getting to be really connected with them. And it's like, so I do have an answer. There is one thing that keeps me up at night, which is, how do I go back? How do I go back to work? How do I go back to not being happy? I don't want to go back to being not happy. Like, I wasn't miserable. I got a pretty good job. I work with people I like my boss. I get to show up as myself. I don't have to sort of like just hide the fact that the quirkiness or whatever, the way that I interpret the world. But it's not what I want to do. And I rapidly want to figure out how to be showing up in every space and in every moment, like fully alive and fully connected. And that seems really lofty and really hard to just be like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to do that. So anyway, that's what keeps me up at night, is how do I keep it going? This is so good. Because
Love that answer. Yeah.
I'm on college. Like, I mean, being able to be home with a child this long, like I'm fucking stoked. I love it. It's the best thing.
Yeah, paid leave for America, please. Mothers and fathers.
I mean, to be fair, EDD covers like 2/3, so it softens the blow. Super, it makes it happen.
You know, I've honestly seen my, friends who work at bars and restaurants be happier in their lives over the last 12 months, in some cases, than I've ever seen them in their lives, And I think that for me, I hate it. I hate being in this box. I live and work in a warehouse and I don't get to leave. I miss the students. I miss things like that. But for a lot of people, it's been so, so freeing. And we all need to remember that, like, the systems that, in some ways empower us to be of a certain socioeconomic status, whatever else, are like often super oppressive to others. I don't know. I think this is going to change the way we live our lives going forward. Same question, Daniel. What keeps you up at night?
Any deadlines that I have, and also figuring out ways to support my friends who are artists or are interested in being in the arts. I think it's very important to think about like figuring out ways to uplift voices of marginalized communities who have never been offered a space to show work or space to even be part of a group show or anything like that. So I think it's just things that are rather institutional that keep me up, and trying to figure out how to dismantle them. So.
Thank you for the plug for Monte Vista Projects. We're an artist collective based in Los Angeles. We focus on artists based in LA, but we work with artists all around the world, and our goal is inclusivity, right? Like, since I've joined, we've met male to female parity. We're working on gay parity, not parody, but parity, as well as, incorporating people who might be disaffected due to race, religion, gender identity, etc. So that's really our mission statement, and thank you for putting that right into my hands, Daniel. So I really appreciate I think we're gonna call it a night. I really appreciate the excellent questions and everyone's viewership. This is incredible. This is my first time hosting in Artist Talk that wasn't in person, or I wasn't the guy asking the annoying question. So thank you, and I really want to thank Daniel and Tim for sharing their work for us. Tim, I don't buy that you're not an artist anymore, even if you're not a practicing artist. And you guys always have a home at Monte Vista, and I hope to see more glorious work from both of you. Another thing I want to say is you guys just sing together. Like, your work looks incredible in the gallery, and I hope that people get a chance to make an appointment and go see the work. And we've got some really excellent feedback already. Like, people I don't even know are messaging me on Instagram to talk about the synergy between the work and these two fabulous artists. The other two people I want to thank are our co-directors, Emily Blythe-Jones and Deborah Braz, who helped me so much, like just getting this out the door when, I'm sure other people are dealing with anxieties and stresses during the pandemic, but just really making this happen. And like I said, getting us through that threshold. So thank you to the two of you and to the two artists. And thank you all for being here.